So the exposure meter built into your camera, it tells you normally how bright the scene will be. Basically, it's automatically set to give you the best possible lighting conditions, but you can override it if you wanted to. For example, if you're in a sort of scene where you wanted to intentionally make it slightly darker, maybe give it a sort of mood like indoor lighting, or maybe overexpose it intentionally so that the scene itself looked a little bit more sort of like raw. And in those situations you can intentionally on your camera change the actual exposure metering settings. However, remember that all of this you can do post-production as well. And so by taking the original photograph at its default setting, you can then use tools like levels and the curve tool in any sort of image manipulation software to either enhance or to either overexpose or underexpose the image in post production. So there is a sliding scale of -3 right through to +3. So minus is for darker, positive is for lighter, and you can obviously change the scene accordingly. And it does, in essence, allow you fine-tuning at the actual point of taking the photograph. But as I say, my preference would be to actually take the photograph and then in post-production decide particularly on the larger screen, what you're really doing with the camera is possibly at best using either viewfinder or even a small screen on the back of your camera. And in post-production with a large screen, which is much higher quality, you can probably get a better sense of how that image works, either in the darker or maybe in a more overexposed, more lighter conditions.
The next thing we need to know about is the exposure meter. Now, the exposure meter is the thing in most cameras. It goes along the bottom of the screen. It'll have a little dot in the middle. It'll have -1, -2, -3, +1, +2, +3. What that is going to do is that's going to tell us, if we've got our camera in shutter priority or aperture priority mode. You go to take a picture and you're looking through it and you go like, the camera is making a decision for what it thinks is the right exposure. It's doing that. You're telling it what the shutter or aperture you want to use is, and then it's assessing the scene and making the decision about what the right exposure is. That is how bright or how dark the image is. Sometimes the camera doesn't get this quite right. Sometimes the camera will make a decision that means that the sky is blown out or there's areas that are too dark. And the way to help the camera make a better decision in line with what you're seeing or what you're expecting is to have a look at that exposure meter and then use what's called exposure compensation. And generally you can either slide along the sort of that little meter. Often you can click on it and sort of slide that back and forth. Alternatively, there might be a dial on the top of your camera that's got sort of the negative and the positive numbers depending on the type of camera you've got. It's called exposure compensation. Each camera accesses it a little bit differently, but the point is it allows you to use these automatic modes. And when you go to take the picture, if you think that image isn't looking right, it's way too bright, or there's stuff that's like completely blown out and white, or it's just looking too dark and the main subject that you're looking at is just too much in the shadows and you want to brighten that up, you access your exposure compensation and you tell the camera, whatever decision you made as far as exposing this image, I want you to take that and make it a little bit brighter. Or I want you to take that and make a little bit darker. And that's what exposure compensation does.